On this week's episode of The Early Crow, we have Dave Eustace joining us. Dave's about to embark upon his training career in Hong Kong. His uncle, former Hong Kong-based horseman Dave Orton, along with his Newmarket-based father James Eustace, have been a significant part of his career and his career path. Dave spent time under Peter Moody, with Peter Snowden, and more famously with Ciaron Ma as part of the Ciaron Ma-Dave Eustace partnership. Together, they trained over 1,500 winners, 30 of them Group 1 wins. The highlight of that being Gold Trip winning the 2022 Melbourne Cup. Today we sit down with David and go through his journey and what he's looking forward to with his big move to Hong Kong. G'day and welcome to The Early Crow, a bonus episode with a very special guest, a man who made a massive mark in the Australian racing scene, particularly the Victorian early, but then just expanded to dominate all of Australia alongside Ciaron Ma. Dave Eustace, who now heads to Hong Kong for an enormous opportunity, has been good enough to come and join us at The Early Crow. Dave, how are you?
Very well, Dicko. Thanks for having me on. And having a little bit of a hiatus before I go to Hong Kong, so plenty of time for you guys.
It's a big day for us at the Early Crow. Our master, the big boy, he hasn't got the skin fade on yet, but he's about to go and put on a fucking clinic at the SCG tonight. But he's made time as well. So Tommy, how are you feeling ahead of the big one?
Good, mate. Feeling really good. It's a nice day out there. Not too hot, no rain, so it's nice. I'm looking forward. A bit of the butterflies in the tummy at the moment, but it's good. This will be a good, nice distraction.
Are we running the 5 o'clock shadow into tonight as well, or are we going to get that trimmed up?
No, they'll be getting trimmed up for sure.
What about the dew tonight, Tom? Will there be any dew, or is it late enough, still summer, that it will be perfect?
No, it is a factor. Definitely is a factor at the SCG. If you're a local, it does get a bit dewy. So with this cloud cover, a little bit of breeze, I think it might be all right. But after half time, I think that's when it sort of gets a little bit slippery. But we'll soon find it.
What were your first impressions, Dave, of Tom? I hear you two got to know each other pretty well up there on the Gold Coast this year.
Yeah.
What were your sort of takeaways from our man?
I must say I wasn't blown away by his physique by any means, and I met Tom along with Ryan Clarkey and Paddy McCartan at Magic Millions, and I was introduced to him as a footy player and didn't believe anyone that he actually was, so called him the water. I called him the water boy for most of the night because I genuinely didn't thought everyone was winding. I thought everyone was winding me up. So I actually believed everyone that Paddy was a footy player. Turns out he actually now isn't anymore, unfortunately. And Clarkey, what were we calling Clarkey? The substitute, or
the delister or something.
Yeah, the D-lister, that's it, the D-lister. So, my first impressions, I genuinely didn't realise that Tom was a footy player. So, as a staunch Carlton Blues supporter, he just hadn't come across my desk.
Yeah, it was a good night. It was great. It's always nice to cross paths with a few trainers, and it was a good night. It was fun.
Yeah, it was.
How
good
did
fun.
you land on Carlton, Dave?
When I first moved to Melbourne, I moved in with just a housemate who I was living with. She took me to Richmond Carlton. She was a Carlton fan, and Mick Malthouse was coach. We got absolutely spanked, and I've stuck with them ever since. So I've been loyal to the brand.
Have you got any other interest, like outside of racing, like footy, and is footy like an actual interest now, or you just drop that when you go to Hong Kong?
No, footy genuinely is. I must say, took a bit of time just because Carlton were going so badly, and it's pretty hard to get involved in a sport, I suppose, when they were, and I have stuck with them. But the last few years, I've really enjoyed going. I'll go next Thursday for sure to the G. Outside of that, I'm an absolute cricket tragic.
Really?
Yeah, big time. I'll be up tomorrow morning at 4 to watch England-India for sure, seeing as I've got a bit of time in my hands. Yeah. Love my cricket. My dream job would be to commentate on cricket. That would be the dream job. That'll never happen.
You got the tonsils for it.
Yeah. Test match, not T20.
I agree. With that, cricket commentator would be just the dream. Sit there, talk absolute shit, watch cricket, travel the country, the world, and the country. It's amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
Has it been hard? I'm assuming you wouldn't need an alarm to get up tomorrow morning to watch the cricket, or with all the travel, have you cooked yourself that way that you can sort of sleep in now? But I bet from being a trainer where the hours are relentless and they're very, very early.
Yeah, I think I've always been good at getting up, obviously, but also equally as good at rolling over and getting back to sleep. Like, I'm not one of those people where you wake up at, like, I'll naturally wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock, yes, but I can roll over and get back to sleep for sure. Like, obviously there's a lot of things going on in your head when you're training, and there's plenty of things going on now for me, but I'm pretty relaxed, so I won't struggle to sleep. So
thoughts on from our limited interactions, I could tell you like to alpha a bit. You're a bit of a banter man. I'm assuming I know what your take's going to be here, but thoughts on the Bairstow dismissal in the Ashes?
Funnily enough, like initially I thought it's out. Bairstow, get over it. It's part of the game. It's the rules. And then actually, as time's gone on, I think I've got more sour as time has gone on. I thought it was just pretty unsporting, to be honest. He marked his guard. It was dead ball, but listen, I'm not gonna fall out over it. I thought he was pretty petulant. No, they don't like Bairstow anyway. That is the reality. I don't think either side really like Bairstow, so it probably happened to the right bloke.
That's a big moment for the podcast too. That's the second person ever outside of myself to say petulant.
I'm still trying to work out what that word means, but anyway, I'm just Googling in the background now.
Reacted to something like a child would.
Yeah. Dicko's getting a lot of that now from his 4-year-old, I would think.
Yeah, well, the 2-year-old's probably worse, but they're entitled to be petulant, I guess.
Bazball, Dave, are you a fan?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be, don't you? Results speak for themselves anyway. But I do actually think, like, more importantly, it is enjoyable to watch, and
it's watchable.
And there's no doubt that Test cricket needs to keep evolving to get people watching. Like, I'm happy watching them score at 2 runs and over and sit in all day, but and I do think that 2020's not that entertaining. I wouldn't watch the Big Bash. So, like, if you can get a mixture of both, and I think, like, Root getting out, without getting like too technical, but like Root getting out the other day to the ramp shot and everyone having a crack at Root, well, it's no different to him nicking off because he's being told to play like that. In a way, he then scores 100 a bit slow, and next test it sort of works against that. But yeah, I think what they're doing is fantastic.
Yeah, they're all slamming Root, and what I don't understand is that he's executed that shot 25, 30, 35 times before, and this one he just happened to get out. How often do they try and just push one into the offside and nick off? So I'm with you. You got to push the game on. You're happy for them not going 6 and 7 and over, but I think Test cricket, to survive and still get the audience, needs to they need to score a little bit quicker, and it is good what England are doing, and it's even better that they keep losing from my point of view. So no, it's good.
Yeah. McCallum's a big racing man too, so you've got to give him kudos for that. He loves it.
100%.
Yeah. Do you consume like content outside of, like, when you're away from work? Do you consume content like podcasts, or are you a music man? And if it's content, are you a grade cricketer?
I was listening to Mark Howard's podcast, but I found his voice a little bit too annoying, so I stopped doing that.
I love him.
Great presenter as well, but he just got a little bit grating, that, so I stopped listening to that. Tailenders is pretty good. Tailenders is pretty good. Don't listen to a lot of music, I've got to say. I'm pretty tone deaf and I get wound up for that a lot. I don't think I've got a song on my iPhone, actually.
Wow.
Which is terrible.
It can be hard listening to Howie when, like, he's just so happy all the time. and you're like,
Yeah,
you just
correct.
feel like
Yeah,
a bit of
can't
a
be
piece of
real.
shit next to him. Like,
Can't be real.
yeah.
But if I do exercise, it actually will be a podcast over music for sure.
Where did your racing journey begin?
It probably like properly started like in earnest when I was 16. Like I grew up with it. My old man trained. I was always riding ponies and in the stables, and it's a great environment to grow up. You grow up quick. You learn to swear very quickly, and you learn to be thick-skinned as well. Because I got chucked in the muck heap when I was about 8 most weeks. So, but 16 is when I actually wanted to be a jockey, and I got an amateur license. So it's like riding in the picnics here. I was never good. I was never going to be good enough or light enough. Like I rode well enough, but didn't have proper ability. But that's probably as much as I wasn't good enough, it was still a massive buzz, and I had about 20 rides, and it went from there. Because from there I got a little bit heavier, so I wanted to be a jumps jockey. That was never going to work out. Like the most sensible decision I made was when I got back from traveling. Took 6 months off, travelled, got back, put a bit of weight on, and decided, right, let's go into training, not riding. And I worked for a guy called Roger Varian, who's a big trainer in Newmarket now. He'd have sort of 150 plus horses, and I was his assistant for 4 years, and that was my first like proper job. And actually how I ended up getting down here, because I did 4 years with him, and I brought a horse down for the spring, 2 horses down for the spring in 2014 in Australia, and that's actually how I ended. A horse called Farage. Farage ran third at the McKinnon.
Yep.
Should have won actually. Andrea Azzini rode him, and it was the first lesson in making sure you use a local job, because he sat 3 deep the entire, and kept coming, got beaten about half length. And then we ran a mare called My Ambivalent in the Cup, who actually ran stone dead last. But it was a good experience, and I ended up staying at the end of the trip.
And then when you came to Australia to continue your career as a trainer, where'd you land and what happened next?
I worked for Moody actually. So I had a year with Moods, and it was...
The voice would have got even more gravelly if you were in the car next to him, eh? Passively inhaling a couple of Benson Edges.
My first day, so I was an assistant, I was basically his lackey, And first day, the positive came out. And he'd met my parents, and my parents are, they're English and fairly straight, and Moods is the total opposite, as we know. And he just walked through the gate. He said to me, and the positive had come out, and he was like, and I looked at him, I was like, fucking hell, like, I might not be here very long. And he said, well, son, you better fucking pack your bags, you're off home. And anyway, I stayed for the year and had an absolute ball. I really loved it. Learned how to, he's a great conditioner, but a great organizer, Moody, as well, and very, very efficient, but amazing with his staff. And he's got a great skill. He can talk to anyone, whoever they are. He would talk to he'd talk to the Queen, and he'd talk to his staff the same way, and would come across extremely charismatic. And it was no surprise to me that he had every type of owner, from top to bottom.
I remember meeting him in Launceston after watching him on TV, and he was just holding court in a pub, like, with all the roughest people in the world. But he was he'd gone from, you saw him on TV speaking roughly but eloquently enough to handle that situation, and then just everyone's just in his hand.
Yeah, you can plonk him anywhere. And my first day actually, when I sort of was acting assistant, it was about a month in, I suppose. It was Australia Cup day, boiling hot day, and he'd normally have 10 or 12 runners on a day, and for whatever reason only had 5 or 6. He had 2 early. Actually, Pasadena girl won the first, who went on to win a champagne, did she? I reckon
Something
she did.
like that.
Size or a champagne. Anyway, she won the first, and there was like this big gap to the Australian Cup, and I was pretty new. Didn't sort of know Moose that well. I said, I'll leave you to it. You probably got to deal with some owners. He said, no, mate, fuck that. Let's go and have a beer. So we got on the grass. got me a beer, chucked me a fag. We're both like sucking buggers on the grass at about the furlong pole at Flemington, thinking, "Fuck, this is all right." Anyway, we had quite a long gap, and the beers just kept coming and coming. And I'm not that big, not as seasoned as him. We have about 5 4Xs, and he's like, "Right, mate, go and get the saddles." And I was pretty fucking pissed, like wandering up to the jocks room, 3 in the Australian Cup, and I had 3 saddles to carry, like half cut in a boiling hot day.
Yeah, sweating like
Pick
a
the
pig.
saddles up, yeah, absolutely sweating like a pig. And it took me about half an hour to get there and back because I was just like sashaying left and right as I'm trying to carry these saddles. And I thought, fuck, if this is what I'm going to be doing for the next few years, it'll be perfect.
Well, he was pretty much the king at that time too of the Victorian training ranks.
Yeah, well, he ran the year I was there. He ran like weary, very close. It got down to about the last 2 weeks in the Metro Championship, and was winning. Yeah, the good races as well. He had, it was Dissident at the time, and
Wasn't he a great
as a
horse?
4-year-old. Yeah, and
Disappointing stallion,
unbelievable.
but like a proper like line chaser of a horse.
Yeah. I was actually. I mean, I suppose looking back now, I sort of didn't know the breed or whatever, but at the time, you'd have sworn he'd have made a decent stallion because he was good, he was tough, he was by the right sire, and he was so straightforward. It's a bit of a shame. He was just a hopeless stallion, but bloody good horse.
So when Moody had his sabbatical,
Yeah.
what'd you do?
He was very good to me. He said, "Look, He said, I can keep fighting these guys, but ultimately, I'm probably not going to win. Whatever happens." So he sort of gave me the heads up and said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I'd always wanted to go to Sydney." So he sent me up there, and I ran his stable for a month up in Sydney. And while I was there, I used it to get a job elsewhere. So I worked for the Snowdens for a year, and which was a fair change in culture from Moods to the Snowden camp. But Peter's, yeah, first class trainer, first class man, work ethics absolutely second to none. And I ran his barn for sort of 8 9 months, and so it was the year Capitalist was there, won the slipper. So that was it was a great experience.
Did you notice anything different with the Snowdens that would like be a factor in why they are slightly above average at 2-year-olds at the highest level? Is it just stock, or is it something they do a little bit differently? I mean, like Capitalist was just, he was a stupid price in that slipper too. But
Yeah.
like that, he was one of many really good 2-year-olds they've had.
Yeah, I think I got very lucky there because just timing wise, he had the best of James Harron's horses, and he was getting the best of China Horse Club and the ones that Henry Field was selecting as well. So I really got to see how he educated his 2-year-olds, and he was sort of a big believer of putting them out a week or two before they're actually ready, in inverted commas, to go out. So he'd bring them in. They might even have 2 weeks, and then he'd put them out for 10 days, and they'd come in for 3 weeks, and like they'd probably be ready to do another 2 or 3 weeks and have them in for 6. But he liked to just put them out fit, healthy, bit of condition on, stick them out for 2 or 3 weeks. And I think the way he moved them around, they just then, when he was ready to train them, they didn't actually need that much training because they weren't tired horses in any way. And his getting Capitalist to the slipper and winning the slipper was pretty remarkable because he did get beaten in the Todman, and the horse raced very keen, was just raced really upside down. And I drove him home, and everyone was pretty flat, and he was very, very confident. Even in the car ride on the way home, he said, "Don't worry, I've had this before, and I'll turn the horse around." And he did, and actually the other thing that we still laugh about now is on the Tuesday morning before the slipper, Blake Shin rode Catalyst, and Blake, ultimate professional, and he slept in to gallop the horse. So the horse gallops at 4 a.m. on the grass, and he actually slept in. And I thought, fucking hell, Snowden's gonna absolutely, because we all had radios. So you all have a walkie-talkie, and Pete would be like, "Any sign of Blake?" I'm like, "No, he's not here." And it's like 4:10, any sign of Blake? It's like, "No, he's not here." And there's just this like deathly silence. I'm like, "Fuck me!" Like someone's gonna get it in the neck here. And actually, to be fair, he was very good. Like someone else galloped him. Didn't It wasn't the end of the world. No one's died. And Pete said to me, like, I've worked for Blake with Blake for 10 years. He'd never slept in. It's like he's not gone out on the piss. He's just slept in. But I was thinking someone's going to get the radio thrown at their head pretty soon. But anyway, it worked out. Horse won the race.
I never heard that before.
It sounds like they've both had a big influence on how you go about things, obviously with Ciaron, and then now what you're going to do in Hong Kong. They've both obviously taught you a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I feel very, very fortunate to have worked for all three. Very, very good, successful trainers who all train quite differently as well. And
Did you go anywhere else after Snowden's before you went to Ciaron?
No, I actually no. So I was working for Snowden, and Ciaron, he rang and said, to me and said, "Do you want to come and work as my assistant down in Melbourne?" And I thought about it for a bit and said, "Yeah, look, I'd love to." I said, "I'm going on holiday back to England for a couple of weeks. So when I get back from holiday, I'll tell Snowden." And like there was obviously some sort of miscommunication. I'm being sponsored by Pete Snowden, so you're a 3-year sponsorship. You have to pay a bit of money. And Ciaron sort of said to the office, "Yeah, it's all good." As Ciaron sort of does, he'd be like, "Yeah, it's all good. Dave's coming." So the office rings Snowden's and says, "Look,
God.
Dave's coming to work for us. We need to transfer his sponsorship over. We're going to have to get things rolling because he's back in a couple of weeks." And Snowden's didn't know anything about it.
Oh, fuck.
So thankfully, they didn't sort of contact me while I was away and ruin my holiday. But I texted the assistant when I got back saying, "Oh, I'll see you in the morning." And he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Just come to the office at 9 a.m. Like, fucking hell. So 9 a.m. go into the office, and Snowden just quite rightly tears strips off me and says, "You committed to a job. I've helped you out, etc., etc." So anyway, it's fine now, but I got a sort of half an hour barrage from Snowden, and then he said, "On your way." So
He'd wind up
at the time,
too.
it ended in tears, but it's all good now.
He's got a bit of like principle like vibe about him too. Like if he lined you up and gave you one, it would be right between the eyes.
Yeah, 100%. It's a little bit when your old man tells you that he's disappointed in you. It's one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're no good.
Anyway,
So
life
then-
goes on.
So take the job with Ciaron, move to Melbourne. Whereabouts did you set yourself up in Melbourne?
I got a little bit lucky actually in that when I sort of flew over when I first moved to Australia, I sat next to this girl and got chatting, and she was living in England, but her parents lived in Toorak, so I was there for sort of six months living in Toorak in Melbourne with her parents. So it was like moving in with mum and dad again, which actually at the time wasn't too bad because you're getting up at 3 anyway. It sounds like fairly primitive, but I did 6 months living there, and then I thought, right, I have actually sort of get out because I'm living with a couple of 70-year-olds. Who are still sort of basically my Aussie parents now. They were great to me, but
that'd
yeah,
probably
first,
be a good setup for you to like deliver to your potential professionally. Like
yeah. I
limit-
mean,
you're not going to roll in at 5 o'clock every morning with the sabbatical parents there. You know what I mean? Like you've got to sort of behave yourself to a better level, which would be good for you professionally.
Yeah, I wasn't sort of. Yeah, I did sort of notice after a few months that I sort of wasn't doing a whole lot of converting in the evenings, which you're fairly hamstrung if you're living with a couple of 70-year-olds. Yeah, so got out of there and lived in a share house in Windsor with 2 mates and lived with them for about 5 years. Well, actually, I lived with Annabelle Neesham and who worked for us at the time, and I fell out of racing, so that's how I got to know Annabelle.
When you started with Ciaron, was that Caulfield only?
Yeah, it's Caulfield only. It had, like, when I first started, there were 40 in work at Caulfield.
So for those playing at home, basically the Melbourne training ranks was essentially Weir was Ballarat. There was a lot of them at Flemington, and there was a heap of them at Caulfield.
Yeah, you had Price, McDonald, Sadler, Marr at Caulfield, Waterhouse, Waller, Hawkes, Freeman, at Flemington, I suppose, and Weary at Ballarat. Yeah.
What was probably the most special horse you've had at Ciaron's in your time?
Oh, I mean, obviously Gold Trip was great, but I think the most talented horse was Hitotsu. Yeah, fucking frustrating. I don't think we saw the best of him, even though what he did was pretty unbelievable. You know, he won a Guineas first up, he won a Derby second up. I got no doubt he would have won a Cup. Like, he would have stayed 2 miles. He had a turn of foot. I can't believe he wouldn't have, which is a really sad thing that a horse, you know, as versatile and as talented, we didn't see that. Gold Trip winning the Cup was the best day, but I think Hitotsu's the best horse I dealt with. Yeah.
What was what lessons did you learn as a man, young man becoming an adult, going from like assistant, like helper to training partner with Ciaron in Melbourne? What were some of the things that you've gone, fuck, that was a good lesson?
To be honest, I think the best thing I've learned is that actually the most important thing is your team and your staff, and they will bring the results. Yes, you know, you're making the calls on the horses, and you know the buck does stop with you there, but actually your team will help you with those decisions, and you should definitely rely on that. And also they'll help bring the results. You know, you've got a good team environment, and Tom would know this footy as well. Yeah, I've seen soccer teams around the world, or certainly in the Premier League. You know, you can have 11 of the best footballers and soccer players in the world in one team, and they don't win a trophy, and that makes you grow up. You know, I think you get, when you're younger, you're headstrong. You think, I'm not saying I'm old, but you know, early 20s, I think, you know, I want to be a trainer, and you're headstrong and you think you're making all the calls. But I think it's the total opposite. Yeah.
Does that flow in the Bloodstock? I see, like, I'm obviously in that space and I'm moving into that space, and I sort of have a sort of philosophy of like, I don't stop learning, and you learn the most by losing too. So you've got to have a go to find out. But I watch these smaller operations who try and train, they try and do owner communications, they try and then go and buy horses. Would you say the same sort of thing about Bloodstock, and what are your sort of theories on Bloodstock?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's all opinion, and so the more opinions you have, you can then digest those, and you know, someone's gonna make a call on a horse and they're right one day, and they might make a call on a horse that they really like, and they're wrong, you know, the next day as well. But you know, if it wasn't all based on opinion, you wouldn't have $1 million horses, you wouldn't have £5,000 horses, and the $1 million horses would be winning the Group 1s, and as we know, that's not always the case. So I think with that, obviously you could overcomplicate it, the usual thing of too many cooks, but you know, I think if you got a team of 2 or 3, and you 2 or 3 or 4, and you share what you think, you're more likely to come to the right decision than someone doing it on their own.
Because it's interesting, like on your journey alone, like PG does a lot of it himself.
Yeah.
Snowden's don't do much from what I see, and Ciaron doesn't do much. But between them all, they've all had a significant amount of success. And Ciaron's had a lot of success with tried horses, which is Will. Snowden's have had a lot of success with sort of outsourcing and relationships, like the people bringing the horse as a yearling. There's 3 sort of different angles to it, and all have worked.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, Moods is old school. He's done everything himself from day dot, and I respect that. and he's obviously got a great eye for a horse. But there'll be plenty of trainers who would say they're not yearling buyers, and I think the sort of mature way of looking at it is, or if that's the right word, is accepting that that isn't your strength and getting someone else to do it. You know, I wouldn't call myself a great yearling buyer.
That's what I was going to ask. So you wouldn't. What are you've done that? You've seen Peter, Paul, Peter and Peter, and now Ciaron's set up. You're now going out on your own. Have you got a base, vague foundation strategy for your Bloodstock?
Yeah, for sure. I've sort of split it into two. I've got two people in the Northern Hemisphere looking for me, and in the Southern Hemisphere, like here in Oz. It's such a big pool here. You've got all the trials here and New Zealand. You can't sort of align yourself to anyone. I don't think. I think you're just then limiting the scope of what you can look at. So I'm sort of a big believer in, without obviously like farming yourself off completely and having a dozen people, but I've got 3 or 4 people looking, and they're going to have different opinions as well. And if they put a horse to me, then I'll probably share it with the whole group and see what they think. I think I read a race well. I think I read a trial well, and that's more so what Hong Kong is focused on. Some trainers buy yearlings, and I can understand why they do, but personally, for where I'm going, I think it takes a bit too long buying a yearling, waiting 2 years for it to then get up to Hong Kong, and as we all know, some of them can be no good. So I think you're better off just waiting and seeing how they trial.
What was the relationships in the teams like? You've spoken to how like valuable it is and important it is to cultivate it. Who are some of the people at Ciaron's that impressed you and like have given you something to think about, and you've sort of taken away from them and used for yourself?
I think from a sort of selling and marketing point of view, Sam White, he's a sort of big influence on me, and he was very involved in the Bloodstock side of things alongside Will. I really respect Will as someone he's got a great eye for not yearling, yes, but he's very good at picking out a horse that looks to just run okay to the eye. And it's just he does it a little bit on feel. He's not a massive figures man, and quite often those horses have turned out to win races and be nice horses. I mean, Ciaron's had the most influence on me in that I was more highly strung, probably more eager and enthusiastic, and probably was trying to do things with horses too quick. And he was always the one sort of early on, like slowing me down, and not so much like rushing their ability, but actually just around the place, trying to be efficient and get work done and get stuff done. And he's probably slowed me up and made me think more. And I think that's something that can apply to everyone really. And so, without getting too deep, we're in a world where everyone's sort of in a bit of a rush, and I actually think if you slow it up and have a think, you'll probably save time anyway.
Would you say like you started with a weight for age performer, like off the track, like a man that could inhale a dart like no other and smack beers like for Australia? Yeah. He would open the batting.
It's gonna plug me.
But comparing that to Ciaron, if PG Moody's weight for age, like I think Ciaron's ability to back up and front up is potentially the best I've ever seen.
He's a freak, yeah. He's a freak.
What was it like post Melbourne Cup?
Melbourne Cup, I was completely fucked. Like I think I got to bed about 1. Like I could not keep going. Like it was emotionally draining. Like great night, don't get me wrong, and we went to the Osborne, and
wouldn't have helped that Zara rode it too.
Yeah, exactly. So it's got, and also like we've got a young team. They were all there, big group of owners who we know well, and you're happy. Some owners some owners you just know you can't really let your hair down with, whereas this group of owners,
You kind of
they've
have
seen
to.
it all. No, they've seen it all before. They're seasoned campaigners, but they've still got a bit of fire in the belly, so they weren't going to let you go home early. But I'll never forget, I got a call at 10 a.m. the next day from Declan, Ciaron's brother. And I said, "Oh, how'd you come through?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Oh, how'd you come through the night?" He said, "Well, I'm not through the night." I was like, "Okay, where are you?" He's like, "I'm in the Emerald." I was like, "Oh," and he was having a skewy in the Emerald at 10 a.m. the next day on the Wednesday, which I thought was pretty fucking solid. And we had to do a press conference the next morning at Cranbourne. I did the early press conference at like 8 a.m. on the TV. And then there was one, like everyone has the next day, there is one wherever the horse is. And it's been, tradition for however many years. And I said to like Mikey, who deals with our media stuff,
I love
works for
Mikey.
Ciaron. Yeah, Mikey's like, I said, "Look, Mikey, I've done the 8 a.m. Like, you can get Ciaron to Cranbourne. Surely he can get there by like 1 o'clock." So he's like, "Yeah, no, that's fair enough. So I'll get him." Well, Ciaron, like, just flat out refused to go. And so Mikey rang me again. I said, "No, I'm not going." So he had to ring like the VRC and say, "Look, I can't get either of the lads to go." And the VRC said, like, in the history of the Melbourne Cup, like, this is a great PR opportunity. We've never had a trainer say we don't want to go to the press conference post Melbourne Cup. So in the end, actually, to be fair, Mikey got his way and managed to get us both there by about 3 p.m. We were a couple of hours late. And yeah, the boss just lobbed with the CC in hand, and we managed to sort of fiddle through it. But um, yeah, it was a pretty solid celebration.
I love when you're having a bender and you just watch the evolution of the drinks.
Yeah,
They
yeah, yeah,
start on the heavy
exactly.
beers, the vodka lemonades. The bikes who are worried about their weight are on the vodka sodas. I just love that sort of stuff.
Yeah, the UDLs arrive about 4 a.m.
Oh, the oodles, yeah, yeah,
What
nothing
about
better than an oodle.
the move to Hong Kong, Dave? It's obviously a massive move. It's takes some balls to go over to Hong Kong and start training over there. What was the driving factors of that, and how long was the process of it all? And obviously a lot to think about.
Yeah, it's a funny one. It's like a long term goal, and then it happened sort of very quickly. But my uncle actually trained there. He left in '03, so he left 20 years ago. Did about 20 seasons there. So as a 11, 12 year old, I knew it was there. Racing's in Newmarket, or sorry, racing's in the UK. You're looking at the prize money in the UK. My old man was probably training about 35 horses, and did well. And but I just always wanted to improve on that, I suppose. And one of the ways of doing that was in my mind was always Hong Kong. Prize money is fantastic. It's racing twice a week. It's just so different. I like to travel, so that was like burning away. And actually, I took a couple of horses to Hong Kong to travel in December when I was like 19, 20. And the second time I was there, I said to my boss I'd like to stay for a couple of weeks, shadow a couple of trainers, and Casper Founds and David Hall were there. So I spent 2 weeks there when I was about 20 as well. Really enjoyed it. And But then obviously you've got to train nice horses and have some success to actually get asked to go. So, fast forward 10 years, and I actually went there for a couple of days after Royal Ascot, after Coolangatta, and for a work trip. We actually didn't have any Chinese owners and tried to drum up a bit of support that way. Had a look around, and they actually then got in contact when I got back to Australia and said, "Would you be interested?" And it was a very, very difficult decision. I obviously won't make a more important one, but Ciaron and I are both young. It was never going to last forever, and he was incredibly good to me. I felt like there was probably three options. One option was to be sort of offered a gig in Australia. The other was to train abroad, and the third would have been to set up shop, next door. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't feel that was the right thing to do. There would have been, an awful lot of awkward conversations regarding clients and staff and horses, naturally. How many, I don't know, but I just didn't feel that was, the right thing to do. So it's a clean break for us. We're now, we get on as well as we ever did, and it was a very amicable end to the relationship, which was very important to me.
Yeah, it's good. So he obviously took it in a way that was supporting of you, and it was a bit of a surprise to him, or he sort of floated it a fair bit out of the way and things like that.
I think after I'd gone to on the way back from Ascot, he thought, oh, that's an interesting little couple of days you've had up there. So, but yeah, I think although we'd never discussed it, because it's it's a difficult thing to discuss. I'd never suggest that I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. So, but it's just life, isn't it? And he was very well aware of that. And when we sat down and I told him I was absolutely fucking shitting myself, telling him genuinely I've never been sort of so anxious in my life. Mahjong on Fitzroy Street, Chinese restaurant. And he flew back from Sydney on the Sunday for trials on Monday, so I knew he was coming back. I rang him on Sunday morning, and I'd signed on that Sunday night, said, oh, do you want to catch up for a beer? It's like, yeah, okay, can do. It's not really something I would suggest to do on a Sunday evening. So he knew something was up. And then the weather was terrible, plane delayed. He landed at 9 p.m. and we've got to get up at 4 for trials. So the last thing you want to do is go for a beer. And he's like, oh, do you want a brain check? I was like, no. We need to go for a beer. So we get to Mahjong at 9:30 and, tell him straight away. And he was very supportive and pleased for me. And we just hashed out how it would look over the next couple of months to have a clean handover, which we did. And, you look at the results since have been fantastic, and no one was more pleased than me to see Southport to Okun win the Guineas. And, it's a huge operation, and it's a case of the show goes on, really.
He's got a track record of finding people who are above average, and if you find people who are above average, then you know that they're going to flower into something that needs to be somewhere that isn't you eventually. And that's happened a few times already to him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think his style is, which I really admire, and it's not something that I'd come across prior either. Is give whoever it is their wings, and they'll make an error, but they'll make that error quicker than if I'm managing it. I know what I'm doing. I know how I like it done. That error may not actually turn up, and then that person doesn't. So the first when I first started working for him, I was assistant trainer. I was there a week. He showed me how he likes things done, and then he said, right, I'm off to New Zealand skiing for 10 days. Good luck. And that's that. And he literally said, don't ring me unless unless there's a serious issue. And so I had 10 days trying to think how I think he wants to think. Obviously, then if you're not sure, you have to back your judgment. But I'm sure I'm fucked a load of things up during those 10 days. But you learn pretty quick. So you see Annabelle doing what she's doing. You see Lucy doing what she's doing. Jack Turnbull's an absolute star. So is Joe in Sydney, and so Deck, his brother, is doing a great job in Ballarat, and they'll all train, I'm sure, themselves at some stage, and I'm sure he accepts that too.
Taking the 3-year-old filly Coolangatta over to Ascot, how was that experience for you going back home?
Yeah, look, that was dream come true. To be honest, not even something that you think is going to happen. it didn't work out. She didn't run great. Lessons learned in that. I think you probably taking a 3-year-old was an error, but still, just to take a horse home and with that ownership group was a lot of fun as well. And yeah, it was, it was very special. My brother had a winner that, a couple of days later as well. So it's a sort of week that I'll never forget.
What are the key takeaways you've taken from the Hong Kong trainers who've been over there when you went and seen them? And recently you've obviously been over there. And when are you starting to train officially over there?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I haven't had a chance to like really hone in on how they like to do it yet. It's definitely not miles off track training in Australia. I think they're probably trained fairly light. I don't think they got to race all year round, Tom. So they race from September to July. So you've got to leave stuff in the tank or throughout the season. So I think you've got to sort of slowly bring them on and probably not sort of overfeed them and over-exercise them and keep them happy is the main thing. When I go mid-April, I've got 6 weeks before I actually start training. So I'm sort of that's where I'm going to really focus on how the other trainers are doing it. John Size has been there for many, many years and is the legend there who turns up year on year and pretty much wins the championship. So that will be very interesting to see how he does it. And then I start training in June.
It's
Can't actually have a
interesting.
run until September.
It's interesting. Like the closest to that would be Ciaron. The way that like you guys would sustain a prep as opposed to Peter or the other Peter, Snowden or Moody.
Yeah.
What would be the say like one from each trainer, like pearls that you've taken and will take to Hong Kong?
Yeah, I mean, Ciaron definitely will be like because everyone. The interesting thing is, as much as he's training jumpers, training stairs, then got into 2-year-olds. Now everyone would agree that he could train any type of horse, but doesn't train him that hard. I learned off him to don't overfeed them, and then they don't actually need too much training. And I would say most trainers, particularly sort of you're looking 10, 20 years ago, it's like feed them well, train them hard, and get them looking big and bristly and that's that. I'm not saying it's the total opposite. It obviously works, and every horse is different. But I'd take that from Ciaron as well. It's just like not overtrain them. Moody for sure was. Moody was a great man for a system. Like he found a system, and he really enjoyed training to that. Of course he like altered, but he said just find how you like to do it and stick to it. He said if you're having a bad run, don't change it up too much. Like that's just life. And Snowden taught me how to get out of bed earlier. He was the first in the yard every morning, 3 a.m. without fail, be the first man there. And I think that's just what you put in, you get out, without being too cliche. That his reasoning there was, if I'm the first one there, I'm the last to go. I'm going to see more, and my staff are going to see that too, and they're going to put more in. I think that's pretty right.
For Hong Kong, have you already got your staff and support system set up, or is that what you plan to do in the first 6 weeks when you land before you start training in June?
Yeah, so it's a different sort of system. They actually they provide the staff. Like you have some say in your senior staff and who that is, but they're employed by the jockey club. Your assistant is your assistant, but he's also your translator as well. So he's managing the Marfus, the staff underneath him, and he's also doing some communication with the owners. Like the owners. A lot of the owners speak English, probably 80%. But your big, older Chinese owners, like some of them will actually, like I've had a few lunches where you've got a translator and it's pretty pigeon stuff, and you have to really enjoy the food. Otherwise it's pretty hard going. But that's all part of the process,
It's probably like the translator that you might have needed after the Melbourne Cup at
That's right.
6 a.m. or 8 a.m. or whatever that time you're doing the interview was.
Yeah, 100%. Just chatting Swahili.
All right, that's been a phenomenal chat, Dave. Thank you so much for your time. Did you end up getting Tom's sunnies back to him? I think it was a pretty big concern for Tommy there. He might have, it was one of the great debacles, let's be honest, like not just for you but for me that week. He pestered me for 4 or 5 days from my room. The Magic Millions graciously provided for me, and I decided to head home and see my kids. And I said, "Yeah, good news, mate. I'm going to go home and get the earlier flight. I'm going to leave my key with Butch." And I got a text from Butch on the Sunday, and he said, "I haven't heard from your fucking mate Tom Papley." And then I said, "Hey, you need to go and get the key off Butch." And he sent me a photo, and he's on the couch back in Sydney. I heard he sort of gave you a bit of grief as well.
Yeah, well, for a man who supposedly is a footy player on $1 million a year, I was starting to doubt it again when he was chasing a pair of fucking sunglasses the next morning. I couldn't believe it. Tight bastard. I had to leave it. I left them at reception. The reception wouldn't give them to him. I ended up giving them to a staff member, and he goes to Randwick Kenzo on a Wednesday to go and pick up a pair of sunnies. I couldn't believe it. So anyway, we'll do anything. Do anything for a potential client.
They were expensive. It was funny because
they want to be made of fucking gold.
It was funny because when Butch didn't reply, we went back to your apartment.
Too good.
All right, that's been Early Crow episode 23, a in-depth chat with Dave Eustace, superstar trainer, headed to Hong Kong. Dave, thanks so much, man. We'll be tuning in and cheering them home for you. All the best over there, my man, and hopefully we get you back on for a catch-up sometime soon.
Thanks, Nico. Praddy, Tom, good luck tonight, mate.
Cheers.
Good luck yourself, mate. Thank you.